Lawrence Leung, actor, comedian, writer, screenwriter, stand-up, illusionist. I've given up. Lawrence, just briefly, how do you describe yourself now?
Now, oh golly, someone with a bit of a cold, but I guess I am someone who gets really bored very easily if I stick to one thing. So I know growing up, I've always wanted to try many different things out, and we don't often get a chance to try new things. Be it, like I said, like you were saying, being a filmmaker, it's kind of no different to being on stage. It still requires a certain amount of production, writing, creativity. I'm very lucky that I work in a genre which is comedy, and so it's not particularly a medium. It's a genre, so I can slot into many different things, be it film, TV, radio, or stage.
Okay. Now we're here primarily to talk about your film Sucker,
Yes,
which we'll get onto just in a moment. But I did just want to ask you just a general question about which direction you're heading in, because you've made some really good TV shows. You also have some this interest in illusions, and in deception, and in magic. And you're also very into TV production, given the quality of the second TV series you made, which was...
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The very, very high production values in that. I'm interested in knowing now, at the age of...
The ripe age of 30 something.
39, we'll take that as. Or late 30, we'll say late 30s.
30 something.
Are you heading in a particular direction, comedy-wise, in terms of where you want to take your work?
Oh, I mean, comedy, like I said, it's a genre. I can sort of try different things. I mean, I love film. Film's like a great direction to take things. But also, I mean, being a fan of television, it doesn't have to be comedy. Like a lot of comedies these days have a lot of heart. They have a lot of drama in them as well. I'm doing a lot of writing for other TV shows. So, I like the idea that TV now, you can try and explore a few things that you don't have the time to do in a feature film, especially when it comes to long-form TV shows these days.
Now, tell us about Sucker. Just firstly, what is Sucker about?
Sucker is, what is it about? Well, I guess it's a coming-of-age con artist movie. It's a road movie. It's a love story. It's a story of a young 17-year-old guy who happens to get caught up in the wrong crowd, meets a charismatic con artist played by Timothy Spall.
The noted British actor.
The noted British actor from a lot of Mike Leigh films. Although when I told my friends, hey, I've got this guy in my film, they were like, who is this guy? And I said, okay, he's in Harry Potter. And then they were like, wow, they were impressed. So I have to say, he's also in Harry Potter films. So it's a coming-of-age story and also a con artist movie, and it's quite a ripper.
Right, and it's basically about him joining up with this guy and a young woman played by Lily Sullivan, an
Correct.
up-and-coming actress, and they basically go on this road trip where they embark on several very interesting scams.
Yep.
The ultimate goal being to attend some huge card game in Melbourne.
That's
so
correct.
It has a very interesting arc, and of course along the way he learns about life and love and loss and deception and trickery and all the rest of it. It's a really well packaged, really tightly structured film, I thought, and it is based on the award-winning 2001 stage show you did at the Fringe Festival in Melbourne?
That's correct, yeah. I performed this as a one-man solo show back in 2001 in the Fringe Festival. I took it all around Australia and the world. And every time I performed a season somewhere, someone would always come up to me and say, oh, that should be a film. And by the time I performed it in the Opera House in Sydney, that was like my 100th performance. And I was getting TV producers saying, oh, it should be a documentary series or a TV series. Filmmakers saying this should be a movie. But I ended up going back to my roots, which was in the very first production of it. Ben Chessel, who's the director of the movie now, he was a filmmaker who sent me an email, and I knew him from uni, so he was a good friend of mine. And the email was his vision of what the film would be if he made it into a film, and it pretty much matched up with my vision of what I expected the film to be if it was ever a film. And many, many years later, here we are, we wrote the film together, and now it's on screen.
Now, it took how long for you to actually get the screenplay into final shape? Because I imagine adapting a live stage show with projection and multimedia and
Yeah.
gags and live tricks and all the rest of it. Hard to translate into film. So how long did the process, Lawrence, actually take?
The process to make it into a feature film from a live show took, the better part of 5 or 6 years. I mean, we had many different drafts, and it's always quite difficult to adapt something that's on a stage which is in people's minds, because if it's a one-man storytelling show, the images and the pictures are all inside the audience's head, whereas with film, it's a completely different language. We get to represent what people see, and also try a few different things that we didn't have time to do in a live show, which is only about 60 minutes long, whereas this film is, almost 2 hours. So we get to have a bit more about the characters, the backstories, and have some cracking dialogue that we don't have to have when I'm doing a one-man show. So yeah, it was interesting trying to structure it as a movie as well, because in a live show, I can see where the audience's reactions are. They're literally in front of me. And the great thing about the story of the live show in the movie is that we didn't have to change too many of the beats, because in many ways I've had 100 test audiences when I've told the story on a stage, and I can see their eyes lighting up at different points. So we just kept those beats in the film.
And I'm taking it that you did a little bit of research about other con films and how they work, and knowingly borrowed or paid homage to the way that they work as well. I'm thinking about films like The Sting, about Rounders. Are there any other films?
Oh, I love House of Games,
Oh,
David
yes,
Mamet,
David
Spanish
Mamet.
Prisoner. I'm a big fan of con artist movies, and also con artist stories and books and things like that. What I love about the film is that it's structured very much like a con, but also it's very meta too, because there's a lot going on both inside the film and outside the film. The character in the film, his name is Lawrence. It's based on a story which I told many years ago, which was a story about me as a 17-year-old, but what's real, what's not real. We also have a young 20-year-old actor playing the 17-year-old version of me, so there's two Lawrences in the film at different points. I like the fact that we play on a few different levels to keep the audience guessing. I think of the film as gameplay with the audience.
Right. Well, it works very, very well. It's a very engaging film. And I just wanted to quickly mention this thing. Was this thing a particular inspiration or a particular reference point that you used?
I think there's a book called The Big Con by David Mora, which is a film which, sorry, not a film, a book which interviews genuine con artists. This guy was a linguist, and he interviewed a whole bunch of genuine con artists from the 1950s who have been, plying their wares since like the early, since the Depression, basically. And so this is a wonderful book which looks at the psychology, the language, and the mechanics of how these people plied their trade. And it turns out that this book is also a source book for The Sting. In fact, the estate of David Mora tried to sue the makers of The Sting. So if you want to go back and look at how cons work, this is a wonderful text to look at. And it's something that I was like reading and inspired by when it came to be making this story.
Terrific. So, Sucker, terrific adventure, comedy, con film. Strongly recommend anyone to go see it. Now to brass tacks.
Yeah.
I saw this film at the Melbourne International Film Festival last year.
Yes.
And when I saw it, I thought, this is terrific. We are in the middle of one of the best years for Australian film. This film is going to fit so beautifully into the narrative of the year.
Yeah.
So when it comes out later in the year, it's going to be another nice commercial hit for the film.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, that was
Thank
the
you for
dream.
believing in us.
Well, that was the dream, and I did ask to be notified when it came out. And then the next thing I hear about it, it's February, and it's there on the DVD shelves in JB Hi-Fi. Do a bit of research. You had a week and a half or something in some cinemas. You got a very limited Q&A release.
That's right.
Lawrence, what happened to the release of your movie?
I think it's because our film was released the week before Force Awakens. So, when you're released the week before Star Wars, good luck to Star Wars. I think by the time the film was done, all the cinemas were taken over by Force Awakens. And it's also an interesting thing. I mean, this, like you were saying, last year, 2015, was a year of a lot of great Australian films. Turns out a lot of them are adaptations of stage shows. So these are stories which are proven on the stage. We're talking about from Daughter to Holding the Man to all sorts of films where and adaptations where they had audiences from the stage and critical acclaim, and Suckers was like that too. It's a different type of. It's not highbrow theatre. It was definitely theatre. It was a comedy. It started off in the comedy festival and fringe festivals, and what I loved about it was the fact that we managed to make a film that had an Australian Asian lead, which is also something we don't usually see in feature films, and it wasn't something which was the main feature. It wasn't like an Asian story set in Cabramatta with lots of drugs, or a heroin drama. It was just a coming of age story, with a guy who just happened to be Asian. There's a lot of things going on in this film which are maybe because there were too many different things going on, who knows, but I just definitely think it would have found an audience, because when we did the Q&A screenings, I looked out into the crowd and I wanted to ask the audience, how did you hear about the film and why did you come? Because when I looked out there were people from every single demographic you could think of. There were like oldies, there were young kids, there were Asians, there were whiteys, there were everybody. And I remember on the first screening, the first two questions. The first question was from an older gent. He looked about 60, and he was very much almost like a film reviewer. He was meant to ask a question, but he spent like 3 minutes praising the film in terms of its structure and playing with the genre. And then the second question was this young 14-year-old girl who said to our main actor, John, was this your first time you kissed someone? So like we had so many different demographics come to see the film, and they all loved it. So that was wonderful.
But were you disappointed that it didn't get a theatrical release?
Oh,
just a plain old straight out 40, 50 screens across the nation.
Absolutely.
Were you expecting that?
When you make a film, you want it to be seen in the way that you would be if you were an audience member, which is, sitting there with popcorn with a bunch of friends and watching a cracking yarn. Of course, I'd love it to have a wider release in the cinemas. And it's interesting that seems to be the way that a lot of Australian films go these days. They don't have the support that a lot of the international films will get, possibly because we don't have the mega budgets that they can buy all of the advertising, all of the bus shelters, all of the posters. When it comes down to it, I think that when it comes to Australian films, people will go if they know the films are on. And word of mouth, of course, spreads.
Have you been reading my stuff? Have you?
Oh,
because I've been saying that.
We've been thinking the same thing.
Okay, let me just say something to you now.
Yes.
That I've said to a lot of filmmakers, and that is that if this film was an American film, if it was the exact same movie, but American, it would have come in. Everyone would have known about it 3 or 4 weeks before it opened. They would have decided from some really snappy TV ads, which they would have been very familiar with, and maybe had seen 2 or 3 versions of.
Yep.
And the billboards, they would have said, oh yeah, sounds like a fun film. The film would have come, gotten a modest release, made a nice 3 or 4 million, maybe 5 million, come and gone, as so many mid-range American films do.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what this film was destined to have done in a more perfect world than we're living in now. As it is, it's unfortunately another example of a really good movie made by someone who has recognition. You've got a name, dude.
Thank you,
Everyone knows your name. So that would have sold. It just strikes me as that would turn out to be an anomaly from last year.
Yeah, right.
We're now into this year, and it seems we don't want to go back to the same pattern. So I'm just making that as a comment to you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for supporting the movie. And I certainly know that when people see it, they always say the same thing. Even in the Q&As, it's like, I want to tell my friends about this. Is it showing further? Like, people want to see it after they've seen it. They always think, that wasn't what I expected of an Australian feature film. That was completely different, and I loved it. So, yeah, I think it's a very interesting time where if we could support the Australian filmmakers as much as we do the American filmmakers. And a lot of it comes down to exposure. And if you've heard about the film, you would go and see it.
Okay.
I know certainly when I go through the queues at, say, a cinema or Hoyts or somewhere, you see bunches of people turning up and they look at the what's on
the poster art.
And they look at the times and they look at the names and they go, I haven't heard about that film.
And that's
and then they don't go see it.
I know that's where most of the decisions are made. They're made in the foyer
Yep,
I
on the
mean,
fly.
Yeah, you know, when people say, where are Australian audiences? My response is always the same thing. They're exactly where they're supposed to be. They're in the foyer of the cinema looking at the poster art of your film
Yeah.
and deciding whether or not to buy a ticket on the basis of what they know about the movie.
Yeah.
And Sucker was such a great sell. Your name, Timothy Spall,
yeah.
the story, I think it could have done with a much sexier poster, but it just seems a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Tell us, if people want to see the film, they can buy it obviously at JB Hi-Fi for $7 or whatever. Where else can they see the film?
They can see the film at suckerthemovie.net, so you can stream it, or you can get the DVD from that site, or you can watch it from iTunes. There's a link there. So suckerthemovie.net.
I will put all that stuff on the site.
And, you know, soon, from not too long from now, I'll be selling some of the DVDs on my website as well.
That's what I wanted to ask as well. You mean DVDs of the film?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what about of your TV shows? Because they've become a bit hard to find.
Yes, they are hard to find.
Why?
Well, it's been a while since there. So
It's
there's
been
Maximum
4 years.
Choppage. Maximum Choppage was recently.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
2011.
2011, and also Choose Your Own Adventure.
Yeah,
2009.
yeah. That's not a long time ago.
No.
But if people want to get those DVDs, how can they?
I think they're still online.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just you just have to search around for it.
Okay.
But I shall be getting some DVDs soon that I'll sell on my website from Maximum Choppage, and also Sucker.
Great, that's terrific. Now, just quickly, agenda.
Yes.
You have Lawrence Leung an agenda.
An agenda.
Now, I'm asking this
I'm a
question
lizard
openly.
man, yes,
I'm
yes.
asking this question openly because I spoke with Tony Ayres a little while ago about his new movie, and they asked him whether he had an agenda.
Yeah, what's
and he
his
said,
agenda?
yeah. He said, yeah. He said he had a pro-gay agenda and he had
yeah.
a pro-Asian agenda. And
okay.
major props to Tony Ayres and major props to anyone who says, yeah, I got an agenda. I've got a purpose for doing this. So you've often commented on the fact that this film has an Asian lead.
Yeah,
and we don't
yeah.
have many Asian leads.
No, we don't.
In film. And we don't have many Asians really on television.
Not that many, no.
Yeah.
no.
So is that part of an agenda that you'd like to pursue, just to get more Asian faces?
Oh, yeah.
on
I don't
TV?
know.
Given that there are so many in the community.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an agenda, but it certainly would be great. I mean, if we look at Sydney and Melbourne, 20%, we're getting close to 20%, so that's 1 in 5 people are from Asian origins. We live in the Asia-Pacific region, so it would be great to represent what's in the community on screen. In terms of agenda, I guess my agenda is I like telling stories that make people think a little bit, because what they're seeing may not be exactly what they see. So if people look at all of my work from stage, screen and theatre, and even some of the sketches I write, it's always about someone is either hiding a secret or it's about the psychology of deception.
You do like deception, don't you?
Oh, I love it.
Trickery.
I love trickery. I love the idea that, seeing is not always believing. So Unbelievable was about that. We had episodes not just about magic, but also about manipulation and lies and things. False psychics. We had Choose Your Own Adventure was very much a story about me trying to do all the things that I've always wanted to do when I was a kid, but never got around to it. But we were playing with reality as well, because I was playing a heightened version of myself, and my actual real parents were in the show. So yeah, I do like, and Sucker, of course, with young John Luck playing a younger version of myself, and there were 2 Lawrences at different points in the film. I do love playing with that idea of seeing is not always believing.